Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of Cougar Dash. We've got a crossover special ahead of the game against University of Oregon. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Izzy LaRue from the Duck Dash. Izzy, how you feeling? How's it going?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm excited for this game on Saturday.
hmm
Luckily, our game didn't get canceled. You
Yeah.
look at the Pac-12, they're scrambling everywhere.
Yeah, up here, the game looks like it'll go off without a hitch, other than maybe some snow on the ground, but not too bad. So the first thing, I don't think we can start talking about this game any other way than to hit on the quarterbacks. We both schools have new guys, kind of leading the team. So how about you tell me about your guy? I'll tell you about mine, and then we'll talk about who's got the edge, whose guy's better.
Yeah, so we got this guy, Tyler Shuck, who was Herbert's backup last year. He didn't really see a lot of action last season, and now when we saw him play this past Saturday, he was in Joe Moorhead's RPO offense, and he seemed like a completely different quarterback than what I saw before. Because this guy, he's athletic. I didn't know he was this athletic. I thought he was just going to be some quarterback in the pocket, just throwing the ball. No, this guy can run. He almost had 90 rushing yards. He had a rushing TD, and he can throw the ball pretty deep too. He had some deep bombs go for him. But the only thing that I will say about him is that these Washington State linebackers have to be good at coverage because they're going to get picks, honestly. Because this guy, he does not know how to go through his progressions. Once he sees his first guys covered, he either try to force a throw or he's going to try to throw it deep to the go route outside. He doesn't really know how to read a defense, go through his progressions. So that's one spot where the Cougars defense can get Oregon.
hmm I mean, you know, can't really blame him for just wanting to chuck it to some of those receivers because you guys have some freaks out there. I know um, that the Pittman guy, he had just an insane catch. I think Micah Pittman, that was a crazy one. But yeah, kind of similar to what we've got up here in Pullman. Obviously, Jaden Delora, he's a true freshman, so the one thing or one of the things Shuck has over him is a little bit of experience, in that offense. But in game one, he looked pretty good. He played kind of like a veteran. Some of the things you mentioned with Shuck, he showed the ability to do. Did a pretty good job of going through his progressions. He made some backside throws and stuff like that, and he didn't make a lot of mistakes. He short armed a few balls. He had one interception, kind of trying to chuck it deep, but for the most part, he kind of just did what he was supposed to in the offense. And just like Shuck, he's mobile. He also had a rushing touchdown. I think he ran for 43 yards, something like that. Showing what he can do on the ground. So I think when it comes to the quarterbacks, they're really pretty even. Neither one is going to be the guy that is just going to lead this team. WCU has had those in the past few years. Obviously, Oregon with Justin Herbert had a guy that they could rely on. So we're definitely looking at teams that have these guys, but as of right now, they're not the stars of the team just yet. So I think I would probably give it to Shuck, maybe just based on some experience, but I think this is definitely going to be the biggest test. I know for sure for Delora going against this defense, it's going to be much more difficult than it was against Oregon State.
Yeah, Ryan. I'm not really talking down my QB right now. It's more healthy criticism. It's always good to give some criticism. You always want your quarterback to be the best. So by pointing out the deficiencies in his game, hopefully he'll get better at it. And I know Mario Cristobal, he talked about it too. He's like, yeah, going through his progressions is a big thing that he's been working on, and we should see it progress throughout the season. So I hope that happens because once he does that, he can be a legit QB. He already showed it. And the funny thing is, Cody, about these two quarterbacks, they both had 227 passing yards
Yeah.
and one interception apiece. It's kind of crazy that they had very similar stats in the passing game.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because both teams kind of relied on the ground game, which I know we're going to get to in a little bit in that segment too. But I mean, I agree. I don't think it's bad to kind of realize what your quarterback can do and can't do. Delora obviously wasn't kind of pressed to do a lot of stuff, but I mean, if he goes out there and tries to force some things against Oregon, which he did at the start, he started out a little shaky, whether it was nerves or things like that, but if he keeps trying to press it, like we could see those mistakes. And Shuck, I mean, he may not have to do anything crazy and read a defense. I mean, we saw the way that Tristan Gebbia for Oregon State was able to kind of shred the defense at the end of the game over, the Cougars defense. So, they may not pose that big of a task to him because this historically is not a great defense. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to see what happens. I'm glad that it's not a guy like Justin Herbert that I'm super scared of. The running ability is a big thing because anytime you're going up against a quarterback that can break the pocket and that can make big plays, it's scary. I know Cougar fans were kind of experiencing that for the first time with our mobile guy. And I know kind of something I want to ask you about is I thought that Anthony Brown was actually going to win this job for Oregon. I remember kind of watching the transfer portal and seeing him, who I knew at Boston College was actually pretty good. And I remember hearing you guys talk on your shows about Shuck, and it seemed like, and then one episode you guys were like, "Oh wait, that we've got this transfer guy who's pretty good." So like I don't know, just tell me like when did that kind of happen? When did Shuck kind of take that job? And like, is it still close? Is it possible that Brown comes in if Shuck struggles, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, so Cristobal, he's been very secretive about this so-and-so QB battle, and it's kind of annoying because I don't know who he's hiding it from. Like, it's not gonna make the team better or worse if other Pac-12 schools know who the quarterback is. And I thought since Anthony Brown, he's a senior, it's his last year of eligibility. He came to Oregon, I thought, to play. Like, he could have went to Georgia, he could have went to Mississippi State, he could have went to a plethora of other schools, but he chose Oregon. And I don't know why he's not starting, but I can tell you one thing is that Chris Ball said that both of these guys, they looked very similar in practice, and Shucks, he's just been getting first team reps. I think honestly, it's because he's been at the program longer and he has a connection with these receivers that Brown, who's a transfer, didn't necessarily get yet because of the whole entire COVID stuff. They didn't have summer camp, they didn't have spring ball game, they didn't have like the necessary set points for a real QB battle to happen. And Shuck was just there the whole time, and he already has this connection. And even though Moore had brought in a new offense, so far he has a job right now. It's his job to lose. Even Shuck has said that himself because he knows Brown's right on his tail, because Brown, he knows how to play the game. We've seen him in Boston College. He basically tore it up in the ACC as a sophomore quarterback coming off an injury. But I think the one thing is that they're kind of concerned about is his durability, because he's had some pretty bad knee injuries.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar here with WSU. Nick Rolovich kept it under wraps. I'm convinced he was just gonna, throw some guy. He was gonna let everybody know on the first snap of the game, because he did not seem very content with telling people who it was. Reporter ended up kind of getting that information and leaking it, and he didn't seem very happy about somebody doing that. But he's said it that he's not afraid to play whoever he thinks gives them the best opportunity. So we've got other guys here. They're all inexperienced. Some guys have been here longer, but it's a new system. So I mean, the same with Shuck. It's Delora's job to lose, but I think if he does struggle in a game that's winnable and a game that's close, and I think we'll see Rolovich pull that trigger. So hopefully we don't see that from Rolovich. Hopefully we do see it from you guys. I would like to see that. I'd like to see you need to go to your backup just because Shuck's thrown a couple interceptions. But another area that I want to focus on, where honestly I think this is where the game is gonna just be decided, and that's gonna be up front on both sides of the ball. I think particularly when Oregon's on offense, but I think that battle up front, trench warfare, as I like to call it, I think that's going to be huge. So what do you think? I know this has been a big area for Oregon over the past few years.
Yeah, Oregon, they have these three really good running backs. They like to run by committee. We have CJ Verdell, Travis Stein, Cyrus Habibi, Likio, and you saw it last game. They each had a touchdown apiece, and CJ Verdell, he's the featured back. He's the number one guy. He had 100 rushing yards. It's nothing new for this guy. He's done it game in, game out. And
Oh,
honestly,
we know about
yeah.
CJ Verdell. We've seen what he can do.
Yeah, and honestly, even with this new O line, like this Oregon O line showed how good they were in just their first game, and Cristobal got to show the country how good of an offensive line coach he really
Hmm.
is, with having 5 new starters all debut and block for a new quarterback and for 3 veteran running backs that have had great success, and it translated throughout the game. But the one thing I do have to say is that if Washington State's D linemen can cause havoc in the A and B gaps, it's going to be a tough day for Oregon, just because with this new RPO offense, they like to do a lot of runs right through the A and B gap.
Hmm.
Even though Verdell, he wasn't getting that much yards against Stanford. It was like 3-4 yards, just chipping away at the yards, getting some first downs on 3 plays. And by doing that, he wore down Stanford's defense. And you saw he had a couple breaks for 20, 30-yard runs. So if Washington State's D line can hold up and make sure that Oregon's line isn't getting to their linebackers, it's going to be a tough running day for Oregon.
Yeah, and last year every single gap was open for CJ Verdell, so hopefully that's not the case. And I mean, what we saw against Oregon State from this WSU team was a defensive line that looked reinvigorated and looked like something that is a group that could actually do something. Last year they were really bad at getting to the quarterback and kind of getting off blocks on that offensive line or on the defensive line. And so hopefully that's something that is not a byproduct of playing an Oregon State team, but it's just what this team, is now. We've got some good talent on the defensive end, but the run game still looked a little shaky. Jamar Jefferson had a good game, but they did get some good stops. They showed an ability to kind of clog up front and play a bigger, like just as a bigger team. Jake Dicker, the defensive coordinator, led a really good run defense group at Wyoming in his previous stint. So that's definitely there. This is going to be the big test. If CJ Verdell has like 150 yards or 257 like he did last year, which I hope we don't see, then Oregon's going to win this game. But if they're able to contain him along with the rest of the guys, then I think they've got a shot. And then on the other side, Oregon's got a defensive line. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau is an absolute monster. But I mean, the WSU offensive line is really the strength of this team, which was set all throughout camp and kind of reinforced against Oregon State. So, hopefully they're going to be able to block those guys. But, tell me about that Oregon defensive line and that battle on the other side.
Yeah, so that D line was supposed to be probably the best part of the team, and they didn't really show up against Stanford. There was no sacks. They didn't really get a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and you kind of questioning, like, is this really the best part of the team? Because you have Jordan Scott, Kayvon Thibodeau, who last year seemed like he got better as the season progressed, and I don't know if it's going to be the same case. If it is, that's going to pose a problem because they need him to do well now rather than later to get these wins. So this is going to be a really telling battle for Oregon and Washington State. If Oregon can actually get pressure and get through Washington State's offensive line, then they will be good in getting quarterback in front, getting pressure in front of that freshman quarterback. But if they have the same type of game as they did against Stanford, it's going to be a hard day on the DBs.
Yeah, and last week the offensive line was able to keep Delora clean, which is one of the reasons why he was able to play so well, is because he didn't have to worry about that. He did make a lot of guys miss, potential pass rushers. He's got some mobility in the pocket that's really impressive. So even if a guy does break through, it's not a guarantee he's going to get him down like some of these past WSU quarterbacks have been. But I mean, I know as just a fan of football and especially of this team, I'm really looking forward to watching, Thibodeau go up against a guy like Abe Lucas, who's one of the best tackles in the conference, and a guy like Liam Ryan. And then, kind of the same thing with WSU is kind of a run first team now. I mean, they had more rushing yards than they had passing yards last year, which is not something that's very typical of this team in the past. So the same thing kind of goes for them. Obviously, they may not have Max Borghi like they didn't have him last game, but Deion McIntosh stepped in and did really good. But if they're able to do the same thing on the ground and to get good chunk yardage, I think he averaged over 8 yards a carry. Deion did, but I mean, a lot of them were up the middle. Like he had some small runs, and then he was able to supplement them with some bigger runs. And I know, I believe Stanford rushed for I think 100 yards against you guys, or at least their starting running back. So, and I don't know what Stanford. Who knows what Stanford is anymore? They're definitely not the Stanford that we're used to. But what do you think that battle is going to be like? Do you think they're going to be able to stop Deion McIntosh in this rushing offense?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know because Austin Jones, he's a really good running back, and he showed it against Oregon, and it was kind of concerning seeing that guy go for so many yards. And you look at McIntosh, who, well, what was his stats? Almost like 150,
He had
yeah, 150.
147. Yeah.
hmm he could very possibly have the same type of day against Oregon's defense because these linebackers, they're not the linebackers of old. These guys, they're new. You have Noah Sewell, who he did really good in his first game as a freshman, but still only 5 tackles as a linebacker. That was a team high 5 tackles. Him and Mikael Wright, they both had 5 tackles each. And Oregon's defense, they're going to be getting a lot more tackles individually if they want to be stopping anyone's run game, not even just Washington State's. But yeah, that's going to be a big problem. I feel like for both teams is figuring out how to stop the run.
Yeah, you guys don't have, what was it, the other Dye brother? Was it Troy Dye at
Yeah, Troy
linebacker that I
Dye.
think
Yeah.
was there for like 10 years, it seems like. And a funny thing actually about Noah Sewell, I saw this tweeted out the other day that Nick Rolovich, the head coach at WSU, actually played like one-on-one basketball against Noah Sewell when he was recruiting Gabe Sewell, one of his older brothers, when he was about to go to Nevada, and apparently Noah Sewell like schooled him. So I guess he's already got one up on him, but that's kind of funny. And so, now we can just get into we've beat around the bush. We've talked about, quarterbacks and offensive line, but now just getting into the actual game, the game that I think people don't realize is for first place in the Pac-12 North. It doesn't really seem like it, but with two of the teams not playing, it is 2-1-0 teams going against each other. And I'm just kind of curious. I assume you think Oregon's going to win. I kind of am leaning that way too, just because I think they're a better team. But what's your confidence level? Because WSU's put a scare into Oregon. Like, I mean, they've beat them 4 of the past 5 years, and last year it took a last-second field goal. So how confident? Like, what percent confident are you that this team can actually win?
You know what, Cody? I'm gonna say I'm 100% confident that Oregon's going to win, and the only reason I'm saying that is because this is a must-win for Oregon, even though it's the second game of the season. Every game for Oregon is a must-win because if they want to go to the college football playoffs, they have to win out the regular season, and then hopefully USC will also do their part in winning out their season and beat USC to go 7-0 in Pac-12 play to get that 4th spot or 3rd spot in college football playoffs. But yeah, I have to say I'm 100% because they have to. Honestly, it's a must win. It's going to be a very tough game because these Washington State Oregon games, they're always close. Washington State, they've owned Oregon for the latter part of these past few years, but Oregon, they've turned a new leaf with Mario Cristobal and his recruiting prowess, being the best recruiting school in the Pac-12 and also top 5 recruiting school in the country. I'm excited to see how the tides turn in this series over the next couple of years.
And I mean, maybe just a little warning. I don't know if you saw what happened to the last guy that was 100% confident his team was going to beat WSU, but he's bald now. So I don't know if 100% is really where you want to be at. But I mean, I agree. This is definitely a game that Oregon needs to have, and probably thinks they're going to have. This WSU team is not supposed to be as competitive. I mean, a lot of those years that WSU was beating Oregon, WSU was a better team by the end of the year. We had some pretty good years, and Oregon had a few down years. Last year, Oregon was really good, and they were able to beat WSU. It was a very close game, but they were still able to do that. So, you know, I definitely think there's some spoiler potential just based on the fact that for some reason these matchups have just always been close. WSU, you know, they didn't look great against Oregon State. They did what they had to do, but they definitely showed some weaknesses. But I mean, it's a freaking COVID pandemic year. We've seen so
Yeah.
many upsets across all of college football, and the Pac-12 is usually the team that does it more than anybody, that has weird game results. So, you know, I could very easily see this being one of those games, especially when you throw in the fact that, you know, there's going to be some weather, you know, with some snow. It's going to be cold. You know, I don't know what Tyler Shuck, I don't know if he's played in the snow. I know Jaden Delora has only practiced in the snow, seeing as he's from Hawaii. Um, but this team as a whole is, you know, maybe a little more prepared for that. But, you know, I agree that this is definitely Oregon's coming in, hopefully not overlooking this team. Maybe they've done it before, but I hope that they realize that this is a team that's been tough, and they're not, you know, just looking on to the next week. I don't know who it is, but they're not overlooking this team because they definitely have the potential to pull an upset.
Yeah, I see. The only way that Washington State really gives Oregon trouble is if, because Oregon, they've struggled. You saw it last season too. First half, they start off the first half very, very slow, and then they did that against Stanford too. The game was 0-0 until the last 3 minutes of the first quarter, where both teams scored a touchdown apiece.
Mm-hmm.
And if Oregon is having to play catch up with Washington State rather than having a lead going to halftime, that's where it's going to get dicey, and where it's going to be like, oh, is Oregon going to get upset again? Are they going to choke again? So it all depends on the first half. The first half is going to be very telling of how the game's going to go.
Mm-hmm. Especially, you know, for a team like Oregon, that if they get a lead, they can just, you know, pound the ball for the rest of the game and just take that away. And another interesting wrinkle is just going to be the fact that there's, you know, across all Pac-12, but there's no fans. This is going to be the first game in Martin Stadium with no fans. And obviously the last time Oregon came to Pullman, it was, you know, college game day, and it was probably the craziest crowd that's ever, you know, been inside that stadium. So they're not going to have that on their side this time. And, you know, WSU last year and kind of just recently has been a team that's played really well in the first half and then has come out slow in the second half. So especially in that third quarter, I know one of my friends, he likes to call it the third quarter. They've laid a lot of those. So, I mean, I can definitely see that happening. You know, the WSU did come out slow against Oregon State last week at the start. Just you know, I think they started with a 3-and-out, and then I think they got one score and then threw an interception, and maybe that was just first game jitters. So, I mean, I definitely think that if they can come out and put some pressure on this Oregon State team, I mean, WSU's playing with house money there. They don't have a number by their name. You know, they're not even expected to win this game. So if they can put pressure on Oregon and Tyler Shuck in his first game, you know, with some drama and with some pressure on him, then, you know, it's going to be really telling how this team, you know, reacts to that.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you a question about that too, because Shuck,
Mm-hmm.
his first start was also in an empty stadium. So do
Mm-hmm.
you think these empty stadiums are helping these quarterbacks who are playing their first games in the Pac-12?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps the away team because, you know, some of the WSU players have kind of talked about it since they played on the road, but the level of communication is just a lot easier. You know, usually teams have to go silent count and deal with, you know, fans yelling and booing them when they're on offense. They're still able to pipe in crowd noise, but for the most part, you know, you can still call out audibles and do things. So that's definitely helpful. You know, if Shuck's making his first start on the road in a packed, you know, albeit small but loud Martin Stadium, I think that's a lot tougher. So, and definitely the kind of the advantage of being home is lost a little bit without the fans. So, you know, usually it'd be a bigger test for a guy making his first start on the road, but I don't see that playing a huge thing, a huge role in this game, just because, you know, he's going to be able to do what he needs to do and communicate with his linemen and make the reads and the calls and everything.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about your one of the receivers, Harris. Uh,
Yeah.
do you think he has a level head? Like, do you think he can get mad easily, or do you think he'll stay cool throughout the game?
Um, I think from what I've seen from him is that he's really like matured and he's taken on that role, and he seems like he's not that type of guy. I don't really see a lot of those guys on this team. A lot of them are kind of chip on their shoulders, like they weren't great prospects. They're not these big ego type guys. Not that 5-star prospects have to have ego. So I definitely don't think that he is somebody that you can try to get under his skin. And he's definitely somebody that he's a weapon for this team. He can do a lot of stuff. He iced it with a touchdown run against Oregon State. And I know you guys have some. I mean, you guys know a thing or two about talented receivers. You guys have a stable over there.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that because Oregon's DBs, they like to, especially Diamador Lanier, they like to
Hmm.
get the heads of the opposing team's
Okay.
receivers, and they
Hmm.
like to, even if it's an overthrown pass, they'll still go up to them, be talking in your face and
Hmm.
everything. And the thing is, you saw it happen against Stanford. Their receivers started getting frustrated, and then you had an offensive PI in the red zone, which cost them the drive,
Hmm.
and they couldn't get any points off of it because their kicker couldn't hit anything unless it was a
Yeah.
PAT. But yeah, if your guys' receivers can keep a level head and not listen to the
Hmm.
Oregon's DBs, you guys should be fine. But if you guys can't, because Oregon's DBs, they like to talk a lot of trash. They'll get in your
Hmm.
head and they'll back it up with their play too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely interesting. I yeah, I don't think that these are the type of guys to do that. I don't see them talking a lot of smack. I kind of think of them as the guys kind of let their play talk. And I think Lenore he's more of an outside corner, right? He'll probably go on there because I know Travell Harris plays in the slot. So, but I mean, those are going to be interesting matchups as well because we saw kind of Travell Harris take that role as the number one receiver, but that could easily go to anybody. And so if Lenore's locking one guy down, the other guys are going to have to step up. And so, getting towards the end, I'll ask you for your score prediction and how you think this game's going to play out because I know Oregon is favored by 10.5 points. Ryan and I talked about on our show that we don't think this game's going to be a double-digit blowout, but I want to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, so honestly, I think that it will be kind of a close game, but I think it's going to be a very high scoring game too, just because
Hmm.
of the defenses. So I say Oregon 42, and I'll say Washington State probably 28.
Okay. Okay. Well, I could see that. I'd love to see. Well, not 42 points from you guys. Maybe switch that score. That'd be nice. We're used to some shootouts over here. I had WSU getting the same amount of points. I had them getting 28, and I gave Oregon 31. I think it's going to be a little bit closer just because I think WSU has enough good aspects to keep this game close. I think the running game is going to keep them in, and hopefully the defense can show a little bit. But I think that since these figure to be teams that are going to lean a little bit more on the ground, and hopefully the defenses, I know Oregon's defense is going to be solid, so I don't see WSU putting up a bunch of points, but hopefully the Cougar defense can hold Oregon to, less than 42 points. But I still do think Oregon is going to take this just because, they are the better team. But I mean, I would say, I think the upset chances are like 15%. I think there is a scenario and that you kind of painted for us where WSU is able to kind of just take them by surprise and to steal a win, which would really mess up kind of Oregon's season.
Yeah, that this loss would destroy Oregon season. So hopefully they pull out the win and
Hmm.
start off 2-0.
Hmm. Yeah, and start that Pac-12, and whoever gets this is going to be sitting pretty in there. I mean, WSU's not supposed to make any sort of playoff run, but if they can get Oregon, if they can beat Oregon, then I mean they can beat anybody. I know they play USC later, so maybe they can stick a loss to both of the prospective powerhouse teams in this conference. But yeah, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this game. 4 o'clock tomorrow on Fox. We're going to see it go down. Should be exciting. I know just about every other game in the country has been canceled, so hopefully people tune into that one. And yeah, just remember you can find our written content exclusively on sportspac12.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at sportspac12. You can find links to that written content on our website, dashsports.tv, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at dashsportstv. Lastly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. Thanks for tuning in. I know Cougar Dash, we're Thursdays at 4 p.m. Izzy, if you want to plug Duck Dash, let them know what time that's at.
Yeah, we're Sundays at 1.
Okay, so they'll be on 24 hours after that loss to kind of pick that apart and lament the fact that WSU just handed them their first L of the season. All right, see you.